Hey, what is up, guys? It's Trim here. I know there were some people that were kind of wanting a deck profile of that zombie deck I was playing, so that is what we're going to do today. We will go through all the cards in my deck, why I use them, how I use them, and then you guys can kind of, make changes if you decide you don't like certain things, because there are definitely things in my deck that you do not need to be effective, but it's just what works for me. Okay, so here, I start with two Ash Blossoms. I mean, I hate hand traps, but you kind of need them in this meta. So basically, if this card is a negate for any card that is going to special summon from the deck, send a card to the graveyard, or add a card from the deck to your hand. So you run two copies of that. It's good going like second card because you can interrupt your opponent's strategy. Doom King Ballardrock. This guy is the overpowered meat and potatoes of your deck. Doom King, basically, his ability is that whenever a zombie activates their ability, once per turn and once per chain, you can either negate the ability that they just activated, or you can banish a monster on the field. Um, so you're probably wondering, okay, well, it only works if a zombie activates their ability. Yes, it only works if a zombie activates their ability, but in combination with the card that we're going to go over eventually, Zombie World, that turns everything on the field into zombies. So that basically means that if anything tries to use their ability, you can either negate it or banish it. And that makes Doom King really good. And what's really great about Doom King is it's a non-targeted ability. So things like Chaos Max Dragon, where they say like, oh, I can't be destroyed by spells and traps. I can't be destroyed by monster abilities. I can't be targeted for effects. It doesn't matter because this is a non-targeted ability, and you don't destroy it, you banish it. Okay, next we're going to talk about Glow Up Bloom. Glow Up Bloom is basically the card that allows us to get Doom King on the field. When Glow Up Bloom goes to the graveyard, you can banish it, and that allows you to special summon any level 5 or higher zombie card from your deck. And so essentially, I only run two Doom Kings. I find three gets kind of bricky. I do run three glow up blooms, and the reason for that is because I also run another level 5 zombie, which sometimes can be a lifesaver if you need to search it. So I do think three glow up blooms is justified instead of two. The next card we're going to talk about is Gozuki. I run Gozuki because he's a card that can allow me to unbrick my hand if I draw Doom King. You do not want Doom King in your hand. It's a pain in the ass because it requires two sacrifices to get out, or you need to like use Uni-Zombie to get it out of your hand. But Gozuki is the best card for unbreaking it because his ability is that whenever he goes to the graveyard, you can banish any zombie monster in your graveyard and special summon from your hand. So that would help you get rid of Doom King. The only downside with Gozuki is you need a somewhat full graveyard to actually use his ability because you don't want to end up banishing something that you don't want to banish. Like if you have Doom King and you're trying to get your second one out, do not banish your other Doom King. Okay, and then Mizuki is a card basically that it's like a monster reborn for zombies. So when they die and they go to the graveyard, you can banish him from your graveyard and bring them back to life. I only run two copies of him. I can sort of see it justified if you wanted to run three. With the build that I'm running, I don't think I necessarily need to. Um, so I think two is plenty, and it helps if like Vampire Sucker gets killed and you need to bring her back, or if you have to link summon like Boral Sword and then you want to bring all your cards back after you link summon. It's a pretty good combo card. Necroworld Banshee. Necroworld Banshee is a card that allows you to search out Zombie World from your deck. So what you'll do is, if you draw her, you can summon her, use her ability, and that will banish her. And then you can summon a zombie world to the field. Usually I wouldn't do that unless I already have cards on the field, though. So what you'd want to do is get out Uni-Zombie, use Uni-Zombie's ability and send her to the graveyard, then use her ability, banish herself, and bring out a zombie world. Her second ability, and this is the one a lot of people sleep on, is that when she's on the field, Zombie World cannot be destroyed. It can't be targeted for abilities. So like Mystical Space Typhoon, that kind of shit, they can't use it on Zombie World if she's on the field. So that's kind of her secondary ability. It also protects it. And that is very, very good. So Shiranui Samurai, I use him for very niche uses. I don't know, for my testing, he's not necessary to this deck at all. I kind of like having at least one copy, at least for fodder for my trap cards. Um, but his ability can be somewhat useful. Um, so his ability is that whenever you activate it, he can banish a card from your graveyard. And then if he does battle with an enemy's monster, no matter what happens, the enemy's monster gets banished. So if a stronger monster attacks him, you can banish a card from your graveyard, get more attack, and then banish the enemy. So you also gain 600 attack when you use that. So it's pretty decent. He has a secondary ability, so like if he ever gets banished, you can target a Shiranui card from your graveyard and add it to your hand. So it's a decent combo extender. This card, Shiranui Solitaire, he is going to be kind of the start of your engine if you ever draw him. He's a pretty important card. So his ability is that when you summon him, you can tribute him, and then he goes to the graveyard, and then you are allowed to special summon any zombie with 0 defense from your deck. So you only run a couple of them with 0 defense. So what you would want to special summon is going to be Uni-Zombie. Uni-Zombie actually has 2 abilities. So his abilities are, 1, you can discard a card from your hand to the graveyard. To do this, every time you use his ability, you can basically change the level of a monster on the field, and that can help you with getting some of your link summons out. So if you need him to be like level 4, no problem, you can make him level 4. And then you send a card from your hand to the graveyard. His second ability is, it also raises his level when you use it. So if you need him to be level 5, use both of his abilities. And then you can send a card from your deck to the graveyard. So this is a really great combo. So let's say you draw a Glow Up Bloom in your hand and a Uni-Zombie, but you don't have a Necroworld Banshee. So what you would do is you would summon a Uni-Zombie, use his second ability, and then send a Necroworld Banshee from your deck to the graveyard. Use her ability, get Zombie World up, and then use his first ability and send Glow Up Bloom to the graveyard. And that will allow you to get your Doom King out on turn 1. This deck is very, very focused around Doom King. You want him up as soon as possible. And Uni-Zombie is probably the best zombie support card in the game that allows you to do that. So next, we're going to talk about Shiranui Spirit Master. This card, its ability by itself isn't wonderful, and drawing into it is sort of a brick. So you don't really have to run this card, but I run it because if you banish it, basically, it allows you to pop a face-up card on the field that your enemy has and send it to the graveyard. So it's a decent ability when you combine it with some of our trap cards we're going to talk about later. Vampire Fraulein. Vampire Fraulein is pretty overpowered in my opinion. The only downside is she doesn't work as well in the game as she does in real life. For whatever reason, her abilities just don't work as well, and the reason for that is they just 100% don't work. But what you can do with her is when you get attacked, you can activate her ability from your hand, and that will allow you to special summon her to the field in defense position. And then if the enemy targets any of your monsters for an attack, you can trade life points to give your monsters attack points or defense points. And so if your monster's in attack mode and they attack, you trade your life points for extra attack points. That will basically kill their monster and send it to the graveyard. Now, her other ability is supposed to be that if you kill an enemy's monster, you can special summon it to your side of the field at the end of the battle phase. I find I've never gotten that part of her ability to work, but it is a very good defensive monster, and I do recommend you guys still take her, even though it's just not working as intended. Book of Life, this is another one that you guys don't really need in this deck. I have it for just as like a combo extender, so like if I summon my Boral Sword Dragon, send all my cards to the graveyard, I can then Book of Life and get my like Vampire Sucker back on the field. And that's why I only recommend running 2 Mizukis if you run this deck that I run. Book of Life can be substituted out for other things, so don't feel compelled to use it by any means, but it's what works for me. So it's basically another monster reborn. You can target a zombie monster in your graveyard and special summon it, and then you could banish a card from your opponent's graveyard. So the downside to this card is your opponent has to have cards in their graveyard, so you can't use it like turn 1 as an extender, but that's okay. Now, this card is also a not necessary card. I have it because I don't want to be too reliant on Cyframe Lord Omega to bring back my cards if they get banished. So Burial from a Different Dimension is that you can target 3 cards, return them to your graveyard, 3 cards that were banished. So I have it in case, like, Doom King, if they use Call by the Grave on him, I'm not just shit out of luck. I can still have a chance. So Called by the Grave. Speaking of Called by the Grave, we're going to talk about that next. So that is a card that you can use to, it's a quick effect, so you can target 1 monster in your opponent's graveyard, banish it, and if you do, until the next turn, its effects are negated, as well as the activated effects and effects on the field of monsters with the same name. So basically, this card is great to protect yourself against hand traps. Some people will run 3 copies of this. I find that I draw it enough just running 2 copies. I don't think you need 3. So it's very good to defend yourself against like Ash Blossoms and that kind of thing. You can also, like if you're doing a mirror match, you can also Call by the Grave their Doom King, and then they're fucked. So great card. I think every deck should be using Call by the Grave. Foolish Burial, it's a card that lets you send 1 monster from your deck to the graveyard. It's kind of an overpowered card, but it is limited to 1. So yeah, it's a very good card. Use that. It'll help you unbreak your hand. Instant Fusion is a card that I play that you can combo off of. So basically, you pay 1,000 life points, you can special summon 1 level 5 or lower fusion monster from your extra deck, but it can't attack. And that's okay because you don't need it to. So what a combo that you can do with Instant Fusion is play it, pay 1,000 life points, and then you can special summon Thousand Eyes Restrict. So if your enemy has monsters on the field, you can summon Thousand Eyes Restrict, steal their card, and then link it away with one of your link monsters like Link Kuriboh. And that will kill their card. So it's an effective going second card that you can use to clear their side. You could also bring out Millenniumize Restrict, which is basically a card that will protect you against hand traps. It's a card that you would play to secure your plays. So that's what I use Instant Fusion for. Now, Super Polymerization, I don't know, it's great, but in real life, I run 3 copies of this in my deck. It is very limited for some reason in the game, so you can only use 1. But basically, you can fuse your opponent's monsters into any fusion monster you want. You guys saw me do that in the last duel when he was going to send my cards to my hand and then brick my hand. So I played Super Polymerization to instead send my own cards to the graveyard to create my fusion monster. But you could also fuse your opponent's monsters, so it's a good disruption card. So what I'll do is I'll play that, and if Zombie World's on the field, I will play Dragon Necro Nethersoul Dragon, and that way you'll get a good zombie card out on the field. His ability is not the best. You can't destroy cards with him, but when he attacks, you can basically create a token of the same attack that the monster that he had just attacked had, and then you can use the token to kill them, if that makes sense. So you can kind of fill your field up with tokens and then sacrifice them all if you need to. Not the most useful thing, but it can help in niche situations. The other thing is, what you can also do for a Super Polymerization target is run Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, and that will help if you don't have Zombie World up on the field, because this card can only be Super Polymerization if you have Zombie World on the field. Alright, your next Twin Twisters, pretty standard. You can run more copies than this if you want to. I just find one copy is okay. You could probably bump it up to 2. I wouldn't do 3. So Twin Twisters basically lets you sacrifice a card, and then you can pop 2 spells or traps on the field. It's pretty standard, and it's a very good card. I'll sometimes use this in combination with like Glow Up Bloom if I have it in my hand, and then that way I'll destroy 2 of their magic and traps, and then I'll use Glow Up Bloom's ability and bring out Doom King. So next, we are going to talk about Zombie World. Now this card is absolutely broken in a lot of ways. It's a very, very good Floodgate against many, many meta decks. I've used it against Sky Strikers. I've used it against Thunder Dragon. It's very good. In particular, it really shuts down Thunder Dragon decks. If you play Zombie World, you win against a Thunder Dragon deck. So basically, it turns all monsters in the field and in the graveyards to zombie monsters, and neither player can tribute summon monsters except zombie monsters. And that's a lot of people sleep on that ability as well. You can't tribute cards unless they're zombie cards, and in combination with the next card we're going to talk about here, Rivalry of the Warlords, that can lock your opponent out of playing anything. So basically, Rivalry of the Warlords is each player can only control one type of monster. Send all other monsters they control to the graveyard. So what that means is they can only have one type of monster. In combination with Zombie World, it's very overpowered because Zombie World says that their monsters on the field are zombies, right? And they're only allowed to have one type of monster, so they're only allowed to have that zombie type. So, that means that they cannot summon anything unless it is a zombie type. This is a very good card in combination with Zombie World because it locks them out of summoning. Alright, so what you can do is play Rivalry of the Warlords. You can lock them into a shitty card that you're not afraid of, and then you can build up your side of the field. If you don't have good cards and you need time to build up your side of the field, you can do that. You can take time to build up your side of the field, build up an army of monsters, and then you can kill them when you're ready. And that's what I love about this. Next card we're going to talk about, I only run 1 copy of it. You can run more if you want to, but I think 1 is fine for this deck. You really don't even need Infinite Impermanence, but it has some niche use. Basically, it's kind of like an effect veiler. You can target 1 card when your opponent activates an ability, and you can negate that ability, and then if this card was set, instead of just using it, if this card was set before activating, you can basically negate the effects of spells and traps that were in the same column as this card. And a lot of people kind of sleep on that second ability and forget that the cards they're trying to activate were in this column. You know, I've seen them use like Pot of Desires or whatever it was, the card that banishes 10 cards, forget that it was in the same column as Infinite Impermanence, and so they basically banish 10 cards, don't even get the benefit of the card and since it gets negated, and then they're just kind of shed out of luck, they just banish 10 cards. So it has some niche use, mainly it really just kind of helps when your opponent forgets things. Shiranui style Swallow Slash, so this is a trap card we haven't talked about yet. Very good trap card. So you would use this trap card to destroy a zombie monster on your side of the field. That allows you to destroy any 2 cards on their side of the field. Traps, magics, monsters, doesn't matter. So you can destroy 2 cards on their side of the field. You would use that, but the cost for using it is you have to banish one of your Shiranui cards from your deck. So what you would do is you'd use that, pop your Doom King, since he's just going to come back next turn if Zombie World's on the field, and then you can destroy 2 of their cards, and for the cost, you would send Shiranui Spirit Master, which allows you to pop a 3rd face-up card on their field. So you can actually get 3 card destructions with this. It's a very good way to clear boards. So I run 3 copies of that. So that's it for the main deck. There are a lot of different combos we can talk about, which this video is going to go on way longer than I intended, so I'll probably make a different video as far as talking about the combos you can do with it. So next is our super polymerization target, Dragon Necro, Nether Soul Dragon. We've talked about him a little bit. Millenniumize Restrict, card you can use to secure your plays. We've talked about him. Thousand Eyes Restrict is your instant fusion target. So Psyframe Lord Omega is a card I feel like that works better in real life than in the game. For whatever reason, you're not always able to bring him out unless you run like Uni-Zombie and Gazuki and sacrifice them both. Cyframe Lord Omega basically allows you to recycle your banished cards into your graveyard, so it's a pretty good ability. So like if you use Mizuki, it will allow you to recycle Mizuki back into your graveyard, so you can just keep bringing shit back from the grave. It's pretty good. He also has another ability to where you can banish him and another card from your opponent's hand, so if you want them to start out with like 4 cards instead of 5 cards, this card will troll them. The only thing is you can't use this card when Rivalry of the Warlords is on the field. So, yeah. Shiranui Shogun Saga. So this card is your big beater boss for this deck. And Shogun Saga, basically, when he is summoned to the field, you can banish any zombie card from your graveyard, and whatever card you banish, he gains that card's attack power. So he can gain up to like 5,800 attack power if you banish a Doom King. I wouldn't banish Doom King personally, but even then, if you banish like Gazuki or something, he's still going to be well over 4,000 attack power, nearly 5,000, which is insane. So definitely recommend running him. This card is a card I threw in there, Shiranui Samurai Saga. I sounded good just to have a Link 6 monster, but I don't know, in actual practice it hasn't worked out well. I don't recommend running Samurai Saga. I would run like a Starving Venom Fusion Dragon instead of this. Sun Saga is a card it's a random card I threw in there. It's not necessary for the deck by any means, but I threw it in there because it does help against like Mirror Force or Dark Holes or something, which a lot of people seem to be fans of. So you play him, they activate Mirror Force, you activate his ability, which lets you banish a card or a zombie, or I think it's a Shiranui. Yeah, lets you banish a Shiranui monster from your graveyard, and in doing that, it will protect your cards from like Mirror Force or Dark Hole. So a little bit of a niche use, but it works for me. Boral Sword Dragon's pretty standard Link monster for your deck. It's kind of a heavy cost to bring it out, but if you have like Mizuki's or Books of Life, it's worth it. Basically, you can change the attack position of a monster. You can, that your opponent has, to like if it's an attack position, change it to defense, and then you can also attack twice with it. So this card will help you with like 1-turn kills. So you can change the attack of one of your weaker monsters. You can change it into defense mode, and then this card can attack twice, which is 6,000. So if you're attacking directly, that's huge. Also, when you declare an attack on a face-up monster, he has a secondary ability. This card will also gain attack equal to half that monster's attack that he's attacking. And if it does, the other monster's attack is halved. So that's pretty damn good. Nightmare Phoenix is the next card we're going to talk about. It's a 2-link monster, so when you bring it out, its ability is that when you send it to the graveyard, its ability is that when you bring it out, you send a card from your hand to the graveyard, and then you can destroy any spell trap on the field. So that's pretty good. Nightmare Unicorn is a card. It's a 3-link monster, but basically you can, when he is summoned, you can discard a card to the graveyard, and then you can target any card on the field and return it to the deck. So use it to return like a continuous face-up spell or trap or something that is really getting in your way. Back row decks do bother this deck quite a bit because your only way to really get rid of back row cards is with Shiranui Swallow Slash, and Nightmare Unicorn and Nightmare Phoenix. So those are kind of what the cards you use to deal with back row decks. Next, we'll talk about Link Karibo. Link Karibo is just a standard Link 1 monster, so it's very good if you draw like Glow Up Bloom in your hand and you can't do anything with it. Ordinarily, it would be kind of a brick, so what you can do is you can summon Glow Up Bloom to the field. For this combo, you want Zombie World on the field before you do this. So you'd summon Glow Up Bloom, you would then link it away with Link Karibo, then use Glow Up Bloom's ability in the graveyard to bring out Doom King. It can also be a good way to search out Vampire Fraulein if you really need to, like if you get just a shit hand. Next card we're going to talk about, you can run more than one copy of this, and honestly, I'm probably going to change my extra deck to at least run 2. Vampire Sucker, in combination with Doom King, is a very overpowered card. And you're looking at it like, okay, it's only 1600 attack. Yes, and it can be easily killed, but you can also protect it very well with Doom King, so don't worry about it so much. You also have a lot of ways to bring it back from the grave with 2 Books of Life and 2 Mizukis. So basically, this card's ability is that it has a couple. So its first ability is that whenever any zombie card is special summoned from the graveyard to the field, you can draw a card. And that includes if the enemy does it too. And since all the enemy's monsters in the graveyard are zombies, if they special summon anything from their graveyard, it counts for you too. So you can draw a card. You can also target an opponent's monster in their graveyard and special summon it to your opponent's field in defense position. And you're thinking, well, why would I ever want to help out the enemy by bringing his card back? And the reason for that is because if you have Vampire Sucker, Doom King, Zombie World, and Rivalry of the Warlords up, it's a very good combo card. So basically, with Doom King, let's say you don't want to banish it, you just want to kill it and send it to the graveyard, right? And you have Zombie World up, you have your Rivalry up, so you lock them into only one card they can use. So what you can do is you can kill their card, attack their life points, and then you can use Vampire Sucker's ability to bring their card back. And you can choose a really weak card that won't do anything to you, bring it back, and they're locked into that, and they can't summon on their next turn. So it'll basically help you lock them out and secure the game. So if you can't kill them in that turn, you can make it to where they can't do anything on the next turn. Very good card. I'm not really going to talk about the side deck. It's pretty much your standard side deck stuff. Mine's not completely done, but with this game, you only get one match anyway, so I don't feel like the side deck really matters. So that's it for my zombie deck profile. You guys can make some changes if you need. I can go over some combos with you guys in the next video if you want to learn how to use it more effectively. Otherwise, I think that basically covers this video. Alright, see you next time.